Story number 1. I had been working night security at the historic downtown Marlowe Tower for 2 weeks. Ironically, the elevator only had buttons up to 12 levels up in the 15-story structure. They claimed that the 13th floor did not exist. One night, though, I discovered otherwise. Like most odd things, it began at 2:47 a.m. As I sipped stale coffee and watched the security cams, the screen for Cam 09, the elevator feed, flickered. After flickering, the static cleared. And there it was. The elevator panel now had a new button. 13. I thought it was a glitch, so I rewound the feed. Nothing. The elevator doors were opening on a floor I had never seen before, unoccupied, when I turned to look behind me. Walls that are dark. Fluorescent lights that have turned yellow. An infinite corridor of cubicles. After grabbing my flashlight, I made my way downstairs. The panel displayed number 13 when I arrived at the elevator. However, the doors closed when I hit the close button. And the clock reached 12. 13 sprang to life. The lift lurched to a halt. The doors were opened. The lights above hummed faintly, and the stench of mold and stale air filled the hallway. I went out with caution. After one crackling, my radio stopped talking. It was chilly outside. Everywhere you looked were workstations still crammed with rotary phones, paper files, cigarette trays, and ash from decades ago. Everyone seems to have departed quickly. There were still some coffee mugs with dried-up dark stains. The lights behind me began to go out as I moved, one by one. Then I heard a ringing telephone, a high-pitched, archaic voice. I pursued the sound. It came from one of the distant cubicles. On the desk was a green phone that was vibrating a little. After hesitating, I picked it up. Silence. The voice of a lady then muttered, "Avoid turning around. They are aware of your presence." I let the phone drop. My throat tightened each breath. Still, I turned. At the end of the passage, there were figures. Dozens of them. They are all dressed in suits. No faces. Only skin-covered, blank ovals in place of lips and eyes. I ran. The corridor appeared to go on forever. Each door I opened into a maze of cubicles that were exactly the same. My flashlight started to flicker. Behind me, I could hear steady, gentle footsteps. I slammed the door of a supply cupboard after ducking inside. It was completely black inside. I held my breath as I heard the footsteps get louder before coming to a stop directly outside. Slowly, the knob turned, then came to a standstill. I waited for several minutes, perhaps hours. I opened the door after that. I ended up back in the lobby. The time was 6:13 a.m. 1, the elevator said. I looked at the cameras. All of the video from 2:47 to 6 a.m. was tainted. Static only. I informed my manager. "So, you've seen floor 13, he remarked with a sigh. "What did he mean?" I asked. His eyes were vacant as he gazed at me. "Nobody discusses it. However, it resurfaces every few years. During the graveyard shift at all times. In the 1990s, we lost 2 guards. They ascended. Never returned. After that, we ceased our investigation. That morning, I made an effort to stop. My resignation was not accepted by the company. Claimed that the overnight clearance contract I signed was legally binding. I was now part of the shift cycle. The elevator has not displayed 13 yet. However, I occasionally hear that phone ring at precisely 2:47 a.m., and I no longer respond to it. However, it continues to call." Story number 2. I heard the first knock a little after midnight. I was sitting at my desk in the data records wing on the 3rd level. Hours ago, everyone else had left for their homes. Tonight, I had the only janitor in the entire building, so it was a skeleton shift. Or so I believed. There was another knock. Deliberate but not loud. 3 gentle taps. From the end of the corridor, from the break room. Confused, I stood. There should not have been anyone inside. With caution, I moved closer, the fluorescent lights overhead flickering as they always did in the middle of the night. I looked through the tiny glass in the entrance of the break room. Nothing. I opened it. Nothing has changed. There was nobody at the tables. The coffee pot is off. The chairs are piled high. As I turned to walk away, I noticed it. For a moment only. In the microwave door's reflection. A number. Standing right behind me. I turned back, but nobody was there. Even though I had not touched it, the microwave door was now hanging open. I shut it and walked away, blaming it on nerves. However, the screen on my computer had changed by the time I returned to my desk. I had lost the spreadsheet I was working on, swapped over for a blank document. There was just one line at the top. Avoid locking the door to the break room. With my heart racing, I gazed. It was not typed by me. After deleting it, I restarted the computer. The janitor's cart rolled by a few minutes later. I yelled at him. He did not answer. I approached him and gave him a shoulder tap. He pivoted. He was not the one. The face was as dry as paper, wrinkled, and pallid. His eyes were sunken black pits, hollow. His lips expanded abnormally, and his mouth hung open too wide. He remained still, simply gazed. I stumbled over my own feet and retreated. There was nobody in the corridor when I looked again. As I hurried to the security office, I saw that the cameras were intermittently malfunctioning. I tried using the intercom to call out, but all I got was static. Then I heard the door to the break room slam. With my heart pounding, I dashed back down the hallway. The door was now wide open, and I could see light flickering inside. The tiled floor had barefoot, dark, damp footsteps that led from the hallway inside. Inside, a man sat at the table with his hands folded and his head bent in an old gray suit. His skin was cracked and wrinkled, like tea-soaked parchment. He raised his head slowly. "Shut the door," he snarled. I took a step back. He got up. Every motion seemed out of place, as if his joints were crooked. As he approached me, the lights in the corridor behind me started to go out one by one. I ran, but the hallway would not end no matter how quickly I went. More loudly, the man's voice reverberated behind me. "Shut the door. Shut the door." I was descending, pitch black, with no sound or wind, just a never-ending descent, until the ground gave way. Then I awoke. I am back at my desk. It was the end of my shift, 7:01 a.m. I looked around the break room. The door had a padlock. A sign said, "Avoid going in after midnight. Call the facilities manager only in case of an emergency." I inquired about it. They informed me that 3 years ago the chamber was locked off, after an eyeless guard was discovered inside. No blood. The chair was merely covered by an old gray suit. I now hear those 3 knocks every Friday night. I never respond. However, the door still opens occasionally. Alone. Story number 3. I began working security at a downtown financial institution around 10 p.m. For the first few hours, nothing out of the ordinary occurred. Floor lights automatically turning off to conserve electricity, elevators sitting idle, and monitors glowing. Normal stuff. I received the following ping on the motion sensors at 12:23 a.m. Movement detected, floor -1. There was no floor -1. I gazed at the display. It blinked once more. There is movement in the corridor close to the server room. I was certain that the building's designs did not include any sublevels, even though the map displayed the same floor plan as the basement. Nevertheless, I retrieved my badge and flashlight and rode the elevator to B1. There was silence when I got there. Overhead lights flicker. The corridor was longer than it should have been, which caught my attention as I made my way to the server room. Much longer, and there was another elevator at the very end. The blueprint did not include it. It also featured a downward arrow. Only one button. Before I could press the door, it opened. I now realized that I should have left. But curiosity, perhaps, was what drew me in. Perhaps something more sinister. I took over. There were no numbers displayed on the interior panel. One word only, -1. I hit it. The lights went down. The elevator fell silently, like if it were going through water, without a hum or jolt. I entered a room that did not make sense when the doors opened. The colors were incorrect, but it was identical to B1. The walls were pale green, the amber lights flickered, and there was an ancient, musky scent of formaldehyde and mildew. And quiet. There was a heavy hush. I moved forward a step. Behind me, the lights went out, pivoted. There was no elevator, just a wall. Overhead, I heard what sounded like footsteps. A second click followed by a third. Methodical, ponderous, and slow. I yelled. No answer. One by one, the lights went out, and I could hear breathing in the shadows. Long, moist breaths. I took a step forward. My flashlight wavered. Then I noticed it. There was a figure at the end of the hall, stooped, back to me. Disproportionately tall. Thin appendages. Skin that is stretched and sagging like torn plastic. It did not turn around, but its head jerked abruptly to one side. I went cold. Its head turned all the way back. It had a face, if you could call it that, with no eyes, peeled back lips, raw red gums, and an impossible smile. Its voice crackled like electricity as it questioned in a distorted whisper. Do you belong here? I ran. The corridor was long. More hallways and countless lights blinking overhead greeted me at every turn. All directions were indicated by the emergency exit signage. A few were inverted. Then there was stillness once more. I turned around. The animal has vanished. Then, right into my ear, it spoke. You do now. I turned and found myself again. Sitting in the chair in the lobby. 7 a.m. Move over. Everything was different, though. The screens were blank. Every surface was covered in dust. The computers were from several decades ago. There were rusty benches in place of the lobby's furniture. The main doors were chained from the outside, so I hurried to them. I kept an eye out. The city has vanished. An alternative skyline. Dead trees. No sun. A pitch-black sky with motionless stars. And I have been there. Ever since. I patrol floor -1 at night. Since I do belong here today. Additionally, I notice a new name appear in the logs once a week. One more worker. Another shift that ends late. One more lost soul. Story number 4. I was working graveyard shift IT support for a private insurance company on the 21st floor of a commercial high-rise for the 4th week. I handled nighttime system updates, worked alone, and kept an eye on the servers. Before midnight, the cleaning crew would arrive and depart. Then there was just the building and myself. The copy machine on the west end of the floor started printing around 2:41 a.m. on a Thursday night. Perhaps it was a postponed task, but I did not think much of it. To turn it off, I went over. Upon closer inspection, I saw that it was printing sheets quickly, one after the other. Blank pages. Dozens of them. When I attempted to cancel the job, the screen displayed, "A active queue is in room 220B. There was no room 220B for us. I was aware that the secured records room at 220A was where office numbers terminated. I nevertheless proceeded to the end of the hallway, and there it was. A door. 220B. It had never been there before, I promise. From beneath it, fluorescent light hummed. I grabbed the handle. Chilly metal. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The room was a copy room. The walls were lined with big old copiers. Dust-covered file cabinets. Ceiling lights that flicker. It all smelled of mildew and burnt toner. Blank sheets were being spat out into the floor by a printer that was running constantly in the corner. I took over. The door shut behind me. No slam. One last, firm click. Pivoted. On the inside, there was no doorknob. All of a sudden, the lights went down. The printers ceased to operate. The quiet felt oppressive. Then I heard it. Something creeping and the sound of shredding paper. A drawer in a filing cabinet creaked gently open by itself. I stepped back. First one drawer, then another. Then I noticed a hand. Thin. Gray skin and lengthy fingers that like old rubber. Another hand followed, reaching up over the top of the file cabinet. A bald, expressionless head with deep black sockets for eyes peered across. It was mouthless. It began to tear itself free. I yelled and pounded on the door, but the sound was inaudible. I felt as though I were shouting into thin air. After dragging itself down the cabinet's side, the monster straightened up. With arms that swayed like rope, it stood at least 7 feet tall. It seemed to have too many joints when it walked. It gazed. I pushed back against the copier. Papers were all over me. It spoke to me in my mind. I was printed by you. When I blinked, it became closer. No footsteps. My face is now only a few inches away. Its fingers made their way to my temples. I reached for a metal stapler and hurled it at the overhead fluorescent bulb. The glass exploded. Darkness. I stumbled backward and scurried to the corner of the cabinet. The lights came on again. In the server room I stood. Not in room 220B. No printers. No documents. I spun around and ran to the corridor. I looked at the map once more. The last room was still 220A. I looked at the printer log. No tasks for printing since 8:17 p.m. However, there was only one remark visible beneath the administration tab, close to the corner of the screen. This transferred occupant is still active. Do not enter room 220B. I no longer venture close to that end of the building. However, the copier starts up every Thursday at precisely 2:41 a.m. And I allowed it, because I am aware of the consequences of interrupting it. I am aware that it retains the identity of the printer.